listening to Voices of IFES, where we speak with people from around the IFES Fellowship about all things student ministry.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a special Voices of IFES. My name is David Toft, and I recently hosted a conversation with two IFES leaders, Lawrence Gomez from the Gambia in West Africa and Gisela Muñoz Cruz from Puerto Rico. In different ways, they are both powerful examples of how IFES is shaping a new generation of leaders for the university, the church, and society. So we wanted to share Gisela's testimony with you, our listeners, because on April the 2nd, our annual Global Giving Day is coming. And this year, we're hoping to join together to support leadership development efforts all around the world through IFES. Every year, through formal training programs and informal mentoring, IFES works to develop leaders of integrity, wisdom, vision, and empathy. Leaders who are uniquely suited for their particular contexts and faithfully represent Christ's character as they live out their calling. If that sounds important to you, visit ifesworld.org/GGD to see how you can join in. If you want to see the video of Gisela's testimony, including the pictures she references at different points, head to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/IFESworld. Thanks, and enjoy the story.
Gisela, it's great to have you with us. And could you please just introduce yourself? There are many people who maybe haven't met you before, and maybe tell us where you are and what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. It's great to be here. My name is Gisela Muñoz Cruz, and I'm from Puerto Rico. That's where I was born and raised, and I'm here. And I'm serving on the regional team for Latin America in IFES as the coordinator for the Spanish-speaking Caribbean.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your background, maybe how you became a Christian, and then your journey into student ministry? That would be really helpful.
Sure, yeah. I was born and raised here in a Christian family since I was around 3 when my parents became believers. So I was raised and taught the faith by my parents and my grandmother, especially, to love the word, love scripture, and love mission, really. So I'm very blessed to have had that background. And I went into the university already as a believer and looking for a Christian group mostly for fellowship. I studied comparative literature in my undergraduate degree, and a friend invited me to the student ministry there, kind of my first week of university orientation week. And I think I was looking for something else, a little bit of a bubble, but the Lord brought me here to the IFES National Movement in Puerto Rico, and it's called ABU here, Asociación Bíblica Universitaria, and I just loved it. So I fit right in, and kind of that started off my journey in this ministry.
Yeah, I think so many people have that experience of coming from a background where they've been in a Christian environment, maybe their parents are Christians, they've gone to church, and suddenly you go to university, and what happens next is the big question. And so it's interesting for me to hear of your experience in Puerto Rico, because I can relate to what you're saying, actually, even here in England. But then for you, I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you studied at university. I think that would be very interesting. And also, you did some volunteer experience. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I went into the university and started with comparative literature, and I graduated from that. And I think one of the cool things for me, I was always into books since I was a little girl. I just love books. So I studied literature because it seemed logical to me. And when I started serving in the student movement, I think when I was looking for that little bubble and didn't find it, what I found was a group that helped me see my degree and what I was studying as part of God's mission as well, and something that God was interested in and that I could use to serve him, and to see the university as a mission, and myself as a missionary, and to be engaging with the university. And that was very, very new to me. So I got involved. I loved the fellowship in the group. I just grew a lot. I learned a lot about literature as well, about the Bible, but about literature, about mission. I saw the church in a bigger way, being with students from other denominations, other church backgrounds. And yeah, I just really started to serve because I loved it and I was learning so much. So they kind of brought me into the leadership team and started teaching me so many things. I got mentored in a lot of ways. But I think one of the key things was how to connect my faith and my studies and the whole of life with with Christian faith and with mission and with the church at large, right? And that was really, really special.
Yeah, I think yes. I mean, already I'm thinking, oh, I studied literature at university too, and again, it's one of those things where you learn about the human story from different points of view. But of course, when you have Jesus at the center and you have a faith which illuminates these different human stories, it's so helpful. And I'm sure that helped you even relate to people from different backgrounds. Which is exactly what happened when you went to Spain, right? You took part in IFES Europe Interaction volunteer program. So that's called Interaction, and that is still running today. So that is an option for people if they want to do cross-cultural mission. But leaving your country behind and going to Europe, another continent, how did you find that? What were the challenges? What were the joys of that?
Yeah, it was absolutely challenging and absolutely joyful. You're saying, I mean, I see that picture and it's wonderful to remember my teammates there. I served in the national movement here in Puerto Rico as an undergraduate and a graduate student. So after literature, I studied law and I kept serving as a volunteer staff. And I was so grateful to the ministry here that I started wondering if this was a calling, that if God was calling me to this kind of ministry long term. And that's where I found out about the interaction teams, and they were short term, well, 1 or 2 year teams, internationally going to a different country with an international team and with some training. And I thought it was a great way to explore that calling in another context that wasn't my own. And that's what it was. That's what God really used it for. So I went to Spain, and it was a very different context from the university context in Puerto Rico, which was very Christianized here. So I was exposed to a different university culture, much more secular, with questions that I had never even asked myself. So students are asking questions that I've never asked, and I'm having to explore all these different aspects of the faith and why I believe what I believe, because I was asked that all the time. So that was really special. It was challenging, but it made me grow a lot and kind of study the word more deeply. And I had this wonderful team that was international and intercultural. And that was fantastic. So learning how to work with people from different cultures, I learned way more about my own culture, my own personality, and how I fit in the team. And so there was a lot of teamwork happening there. And I learned a lot about team building. And I learned a lot about, serving and leading in contexts different from our own. And that was really special. We worked with international students as well. So it was very, very diverse. It was a really diverse group. And I think it was key in my growth and in my development as a leader to know how to interact in different ways, how to learn their language, even though I spoke Spanish, but it was not the same. There was this cultural nuances that I had to learn, how to navigate life there, how to communicate in a way that they would understand me, how to understand them, how to really listen to what their concerns were. So it was a really special time. Yeah, that kind of, and it did cement that calling. I did really see myself called to student ministry in a broader way.
Yeah, I think it's so encouraging and enriching, I think, to the IFES fellowship when we have students coming from different places and serving in different areas. And actually, the national movement in Spain is an example where they have seen real growth in the last few years. And it's incredibly encouraging, really exciting. I think they've had events where there've been people waiting outside the windows just to hear what was being said. So really, really encouraging.
It's amazing. Yeah. We praise God for that.
Yeah. But then you're a student, you're a volunteer, you're obviously very busy. You studied law. I'm always really surprised with meeting IFE staff and hearing what they could have done. But you chose to go into student ministry, and you became the general secretary. Could you talk a little bit about what led you into becoming the leader of the national movement in Puerto Rico?
Yes, while I was serving in Spain, I was invited to return to Puerto Rico. I was due to return during that year, and I was invited to consider the role of the general secretary in the movement. The movement had the previous general secretary had stepped down a few months ago, so they were kind of desperate in finding someone to take on that role. And it was a real challenging discerning process. I wasn't sure if I was going to return and practice my profession, if I was going to stay in Spain a bit longer. But it seemed to make sense to me that the training I had received as a student in Puerto Rico was more geared towards Latin America, and that's the training I had received for the times I served as a staff and as a student. So after some time in discernment, I thought that was the right next step. Part of it was looking on my back, all I had been through, and seeing God really guiding me to this new step. But it was very intimidating for me to take on that role. The movement was kind of in a fragile state. We had to do a lot of rebuilding of national structures and repioneering some groups, and so it was quite challenging. And I think it was also very encouraging because you get to see, as a general secretary, kind of all of the different areas of the movement. You get to see what the students are doing, how the staff are feeling, and what the board is thinking about. And you kind of get front row seats to see God at work in different ways. And that I loved. But yeah, it's also challenging in that you have to try to navigate all those different sub roles within the role. So it was a time of a lot of growth. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think anyone who's been involved in any ministry will be able to relate to some of the challenges of leadership and of ministry. And of course, it's no wonder that it can be hard to fill those positions. I guess then my question for you is, you embraced this challenge. What helped you? What helped you kind of grow in leadership and confidence and skill?
I think I was very aware of the role this ministry had in my own life. I was very grateful. I felt very grateful to the Lord for what I had received as a student and as a staff. And that really moved me to be able to have that be available to a new generation of students and staff. And I had huge support from the regional team in Latin America from that period. We would get visits from them. They served as my mentors. They also invited me into a regional support group role where I could use my gifts and get to know other ministries and other of the national movements, and that was really helpful. I went to events like this one in the picture, which was a formación event for general secretaries, and to know all these peers and to get to learn from them and know what they were doing in their different countries. We were in 20 different countries, all general secretaries, and these are some people here are friends for life. I've made friends for life, and that was really encouraging as well. I had mentors investing in me, investing a lot of time and energy and answering my questions, but I had peers. I had friends in different countries doing the same thing, and sometimes when it was hard, that kept you going. We would pray for each other. We could share challenges and struggles. We had these kinds of events that were training, but also fellowship, and it was community building. So I was definitely not alone in that role, which can be a very solitary role. I had a lot of support from my board, and I had a lot of support from these peers across all of Latin America. So yeah, thankfully I wasn't alone, and I grew so much. I mean, learned so much from my peers, learned so much from my mentors on the regional team, learned so much from doing. You have to just do so many things, teach and coordinate events and all these sorts of things that I had never had to do before. And so I learned by doing, but I also was very blessed to have great mentors and great peer support. Yeah.
Well, and obviously there were people mentoring you, but at the same time, you would have been looking out for and mentoring some of the even younger students and leaders in the countries that you're working in. especially now, because obviously you were in Puerto Rico, but now you're overseeing a much wider area as part of the Latin America team. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the countries that you are working in, and also maybe what some of the challenges are in those countries?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I serve now on the regional team for Latin America, and that's 20 countries. There's 20 countries across Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. And I am coordinating the Caribbean sub-region, the Spanish-speaking Caribbean. So I help those national movements gather together, have some fellowship among them, and mentor the national leaders there. And also we're planning events so that students can get to interact with each other. And these four national movements are kind of unique in that we're all separated by the ocean and by a lot of social and political issues as well. So it is somewhat challenging to gather us together physically. It's expensive. We all have to fly. And in the last few years, we've had a lot of challenges. We've had natural disasters, hurricanes hitting our islands. We've had a lot of economic challenges in our countries, a lot of migration, and losing a lot of leaders, a lot of people leaving all of our national, all of our four countries, but the national movements as well. So we have graduates not living there. So it's been a challenging few years to it feels that we've had to restart a lot of things, but it is such a beautiful little region of the world, our little sub-region. We are blessed with wonderful natural views all the time, and a great people who are really sweet. I mean, people in these countries and in these four national movements are so sweet and hospitable and happy and committed. And so it's a real privilege. It's a real gift to be serving these four countries now, even among a difficult time, because we have had a difficult period in terms of economic and natural challenges. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, and you mentioned a little bit about migration, but of course, when there are economic challenges, as in many of our national movements, there's a strong temptation for, especially perhaps university graduates, to go abroad to look for work and to better themselves in that way. And does that does that make it difficult to find leaders for national movements?
Often, yes. Sometimes it is difficult to find people who will be willing to take on roles for a longer period, especially more national leadership roles. We have a lot of really valuable graduates, though, that have been supportive of the ministry, and their work, even volunteering and helping with the groups, and has been really helpful. We also have our student leaders are quite young, so there is the challenge of training them up and discipling them in all ways, like in an integral, holistic way. And yes, there is the challenge that we never know once they graduate whether they would stay or not. So we pray for that, and thankfully the Lord does call people and put that commitment. And we're also, the eternal starting over ministry, where we're also expecting that and willing to work with transitions and work with even younger leaders, and always being able to continue and to grow in finding new leaders. But it is sometimes challenging to recruit people.
Yes, and actually, when these, you're raising each generation in discipleship and leadership skill as well, and of course, when they go to another country, they take those skills with them. They take the gospel with them, and amazing things have happened within IFES. Yes, I know that a lot of our young people have been talking about the issue of mental health and how challenging that can be. I know that that the Latin America team have done some really good work in providing support where students are increasingly saying that mental health is a topic that they want to talk about. Is that another thing that affects young leaders?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I think we all are affected by mental health challenges across the region, and we have seen God work in really special ways. And one one of the really sweet things that has happened in the last few years is we've been partnering with Fuller Seminary to shape and give some formation and training for national leaders on how to manage mental health crises and also grief, how to walk through people through grief, anxiety, depression, that kind of thing. And so it's been good to be able to count on partnership with other organizations and other entities that can help us with that, because we're still growing and learning how to serve students better who are encountering a lot of more mental health challenges than in the past. It's a main thing, it has been in these past years.
Yes, and we certainly join you in prayer for that. I think it would be helpful actually to know, maybe for people listening, they would like to pray for you and your ministry, especially. Is there anything coming up, happening maybe this year, that we can be praying for especially?
Absolutely, yes. You can pray. There's a lot to pray for. I would ask you all to pray for our national leaders, that they would be encouraged in their calling, that they would remember who it is that has called them, and that the Lord is worth it, even when it's been sacrificial, and that they would be encouraged for life, for all of life, strength in adversity, and that they would be committed to the Lord in all the different aspects of their life. And this year we have a regional general secretaries and board chair gathering in September for all of Latin America. So that's the 20 countries would send their general secretary and their board chair. And that's a really special time when we get to chat together and learn from each other and see how the movements are doing, and provide fellowship and spaces for formación. So you can pray for that event that will be in September. And that requires a lot of logistics, visas granted to all participants from the 20 countries. And so you can pray for all of that kind of situation. And that it would really be fruitful for the ministry, that would what we hope to see is servant leaders who are willing to serve and serve their national context and understand their context and adapt to that well. So you can pray for that event. That's a special one, will be in September.
And that is formación, did you say?
Yes, that's formación for general secretaries and board chairs for all of Latin America.
Wow. Yeah, it's so good to see how you're linked, all of the different countries coming together, people from different areas, and growing in leadership and reaching out, and helping others to grow as well. It's a very fruitful ministry. So we will definitely be praying for those things that are coming up. And if there's anything else that we should pray for, we would love to hear it. And if anyone who's on the webinar tonight and would like to find out how you can pray for Gisela specifically, please do get in touch. We would love to connect you and to share prayer points. But I'll just say thank you, Gisela. There's so much we could have talked about, and hopefully we'll get a chance another time. That would be great.
Thank you. Thank you for the prayers and support, and for this chance to get to chat a little bit.
Thanks for listening to Voices of IFES. Follow us on your favourite podcast platform to hear more interviews like this one today. If you want to hear stories of how students are transforming their campuses around the world, subscribe to Prayer Line, our weekly newsletter with inspiring stories to help you pray for student movements. You can go to ifesworld.org to subscribe, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook to listen to stories in audio form.